That will be good, George.
Just a quick comment on the interchange between Professor Harris and Professor Lambridiadis. Although I guess I could be considered a co-religionist to Professor Lambridiadis, my views are more akin to those of John Harris's, but I think John is really a little unfair to Professor Lambridiadis. I think he would start for the proposition that what he was saying is the beliefs of the Orthodox Church are self-evident, or at least if you thought about them, you would find them self-evident. You might not. But the reason for even making that point is your suggestion, which I'm sure comes from John Rawls, but Amy Gutman and others have made it, that you cannot have public debate unless the debate is premised on propositions that everyone or almost everyone accepts. And that's intolerable in a democratic society. Because it would require that the debate would be restricted to a very small group of people, to an elite who share a certain common view of things. And I'm sure that isn't what you wanted to say, but that's the implication of that view. That's all I wanted to say.
I'm a bit puzzled by Professor Lachmann's statement that athletes are expected to compete with what nature has endowed them. Clearly, we don't prevent training. We allow them to take aspirin if they have a headache. So I wonder where we draw the line between illegal and allowed enhancement.
Thank you. I was thinking about John Sulston's talk yesterday, which I thought was very powerful, and it presented really huge questions that face us and that we need to respond to, or else we're in quite a bit of trouble. And John talked in his talk, as I understood it, about pragmatism and compromise. And I wonder if these fundamental moral, I mean, at least two people on the stage I know will never agree with each other on some fundamental moral questions. And I wonder how much that matters, and whether we ought to be directing these debates to more pragmatic concerns instead of worrying about, you know, the sanctity of the embryo and things like that.
We'll start from John Harris, pass the floor to Peter Lachmann, any other of the panelists, and Father Elpivothoros, and then 2 minutes for the chairman's comments, and then we are off to lunch. So please stick to 2 minutes, to 2-minute answers each.
Issue that Peter raised. And to make one correction, of course, it's not illegal in most countries for sportsmen to take drugs or enhancers. It's just against the conventions of particular sports governing bodies. It's nothing to do with the law, and it would be very inappropriate if it was to do with the law. They're punished by the governing bodies of sport by being disqualified from competition. Now then the question is, as was rightly raised, what constitutes and indeed Peter raised this himself, but as a complication rather than attempting to address it, what constitutes a legitimate form of enhancement? And it has very little to do with fairness, because to be a professional athlete is the most unfair thing you could imagine. Firstly, you have to have independent means of a considerable sort or be sponsored. You can't do it as alongside a full-time job. So you need vast resources. You need a vast array of synthetic, artificial, or other aids. You need a personal trainer. You need a dietitian. You need physiotherapists. You need a whole range. You probably need psychiatrists these days as well. You need a vast range of things to be an effective athlete of any quality whatsoever, and a great deal of medical assistance of a sort not normally available in most societies. Whether in addition to all of that, something illegitimate is added by the use of drugs, whether these are safe or unsafe, is a further and separate question. But it is a convention agreed upon by sports governing bodies, but has nothing to do with ethics or indeed safety, as to whether or not particular sorts of enhancements are legitimate in sport. Now, I'm not saying that they should be legitimate. I spent a lot of my life trying to be a sportsman of a reasonable quality. So I agree with Bill Shankly, the former manager of Liverpool Football Club, that football is not a matter of life and death. It's far more important than that. So I don't think sport is trivial, but it is marginal to many people's lives. And it's up to sports to do what they like. It doesn't really matter what rules a sport has, so long as they are fair. Change the rules, and there would be no unfairness in using drug enhancements along with all the other enhancements that athletes currently use.
Yes, I mean, John is very largely right, and you are right in saying it's arbitrary what is regarded as allowable, what isn't. John is not entirely right. Any doctor who prescribed steroids to stop a girl entering puberty in order that she could be a gymnast, as was extremely common in Eastern Europe, would be struck off the medical register if no further sanctions would be applied to them, because this would be regarded as a totally improper and unsafe use of powerful prescription drugs. So it's not quite as simple as that. But in general, I agree with him. It's illegal within the confines of being a doctor. I mean, you lose your right to exercise your profession. Yep. And the other thing I just wanted to say is, of course, what John was saying is about the general applicability of moral precepts is, of course, pure Immanuel Kant. There's nothing that, in fact, prescriptions have to be applicable to people who do not have preconceptions but have a certain universality about it. And that, of course, is the principle of the ethics of the European Enlightenment, and something which I would have thought we would all agree with very strongly.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with you some thoughts after what Professor Lachmann told us about the conception and the fetus and the embryos. The idea, the first point I want to comment is the idea that the ensouled fetus or embryo is first appeared in the 19th century from the Roman Catholic Church. I cannot accept this because from my readings and my studies, I have seen that the idea of the protection of the unborn embryo or child is exists even in the Oath of Hippocrates and goes through the whole regulations of the Church, even which were decided in the ecumenical councils of the first millennium, when the whole Christianity was one, undivided, and there is always a canon that prohibits any harm to the unborn child. Now, the moment, the question is, the ethical, the moral question is, who decides when a fetus is ensouled or not? And this, or who decides when a fetus becomes a human or not? These are two different questions, and different people have to decide this. But about concerning the soul, is the church or is the religion to decide, I think, because soul is not something that can be observed by the scientists. So according to the faith, the soul is something that does not have to do with the nature, with the scientific research, but has to do with religion. So the soul comes from the moment of conception, and according to the belief of the faith of the Church, from the very first moment of the conception, we have a human being which we must protect. Otherwise, we will endanger having different interpretations of the moment that the embryo is ensouled or is become a human being, or the criteria, who will set the criteria, who will decide the moment. So these are things that I think we would endanger if we enter into such a discussion.
Thank you for the thoughts.
Just one more comment. What I said was that what has priority is not the nature, is not the chromosomes. the personhood, but it's the personhood, it's the relations we have to the fetus and with each other. And for this, I brought the example of the Holy Trinity in our church. And the last sentence is that the Orthodox Church is not against the contraception, is against any attempt to harm the fetus or the embryo, any embryo, in any moment.
Thank you, Father Epiphoros. Obviously, that's a debate that can go on forever. I will try to summarize in a couple of minutes what was discussed in the first session of the conference. I will not attempt to draw conclusions, however, because I don't think that's possible. We had a panel of very distinguished speakers who took the mantle from John Sulston's smashing speech yesterday to elaborate further on the main themes of this conference and to explain to us why this conference is so worthwhile. So we enjoyed very much John Harris' speech on the major ethical questions that science innovation raises these days, a theme that was also picked up by Inez, and Maria gave us a great exposition of the advancements in medical science, in medical innovation, and also the ethical questions that these raise. Then we moved on to the question of religion and cultural evolution, where Peter Lachmann gave us an outstanding presentation, and we learned a lot about bees too. Thank you, Peter. And we moved to the Orthodox view of personhood, giving us the opportunity to draw the linkages between religion, cultural evolution, and ethics, especially the ethics that underpin the foundations of our Western civilization and of our Western societies. The reason that I will not draw conclusions is because this debate can go on forever. So I'd like to conclude this with paraphrasing a Heraklis Polemarchakis paper and wonder, it's a question that I have myself, can they disagree forever? John, Peter, Maria, Inez, Father Epiphoros, thank you very much.